There is a well-known saying that goes, always give the hardest job to the laziest person because they will find the easiest way to do it. What is the best real-life example to this you have seen? Was a temp. Got hired for the day to print 30 packets with 100 pages each. Why would it take a day? I asked. Our printer doesn't collate the pages, so it will take you the day to sort the pages into the 30 packets, they said. Right. It was a standard office Xerox printer. It took me all of 30 seconds to find and click the collate button. Clicked the staple button while at it. All got printed by itself into nice stapled packets, and I got paid to browse internet for the day. They thought I was a genius for fixing their printer and gave me glowing recommendations to the temp agency that led to more jobs. At my last job, a truck suspension shop, we did inventory every December, and it was someone's job to count all the washers and screws of every size. It was my first inventory, and I casually mentioned that they should just weigh one screw or washer, then weigh them all and divide the weight to get the count. Everyone looked at me like I had given them the key to the universe. Counting washers and screws went from a day or two, to just a few hours. I had an absolute bitch of a boss at a restaurant. This lady was trying to be promoted so hard and was just so extra about everything. She wanted me to count every salt packet, lid, straw, and packet of ketchup in any open boxes. Like I couldn't say 3 boxes and 3/4 of a box. I had to say 3 boxes and 872 salt packets. If I gave the numbers too quick, she'd know I lied. So I'd come up with reasonable sounding numbers and then spent 10 hours playing Pokemon. Eventually I left and went on to bigger and better things. Went by them all years later, and extra bitch was still there in the same job, lol. I read a comment on here a while back about a college kid who picked up an office job over one summer. He became friends with an older lady at the front desk who always needed help figuring out Excel. He kept finding shortcuts for her, and eventually wrote scripts for her that took a load of work off her plate. By the end of the summer he had made her job so easy that they decided they didn't need her to do it anymore. They fired her. I work in a semi-warehouse environment, and we have to track where items are at all times. When we move X item from location A to location B, we had to type out the to and from locations. We do this hundreds of times a shift. I went online to a free barcode maker website and spent about 20 minutes making location barcodes. I save hours a day by scanning barcodes. That's how you keep your warehouse from becoming a warehouse. Herding yak with a drone takes the cake for me. They run from it, and oddly fear it. Which is surprising considering they have literally zero aerial predators. We only did it a few times because it really makes them uneasy, and doesn't treat them well. But it is very effective and easy, and you can herd them from over 1 to a mile away from inside the house.
I used to deliver beer. I did not like delivering beer. I may have ended up with 30 stops in a day, including deliveries that the customer would call into our office for. I used to bring extra beer and blank invoices with me on the truck, to prevent having to drive back to my warehouse to deliver one keg to a place that I was currently across the street from 7 years later. The driver of that route is still doing that. Automated 70% of my job in a large finance firm as an intern. Never disclosed it and got paid easy money for 6 months. I spent the time doing courses and applying for my grad school. Got my admission letter during the final 2 weeks of my internship and never looked back. Pro tip: Python and Excel can be your best friend.
Worked in a huge hotel by the airport. We had layover with over 400 people. I think we were 3 employees. They had buffet for dinner and then left to go to bed since it was 1 or 2 a.m. Rule was, we should always go to the room and pick up as many plates as we could and then bring them to the cleaner. Took for ages and I wanted to go home. I decided to roll out the cart and collect the plates and put them on the cart. Guests were seeing it and started putting their plates on the cart when they left. All of a sudden hundreds of people cleaned up their own stuff. Duty manager saw it and I thought he would blast me, since the hotel was a 5-star place. He just looked at me, smiled and said, "That's why I like to hire lazy people, they think of ways to finish work faster." I worked at a chain restaurant, and in my last few months there we got those stupid table kiosks that customers could pay at. There was a survey at the end of every transaction, and our managers added new performance metrics based on how many people paid using the kiosk and also how well our service was based on the surveys. One arsehole would just fill the surveys out himself after his customers left and gave himself 5 stars in everything. Dude was always ranked top of the servers. Fucking genius. Boss hated Excel to the point where he didn't want us using formulas because you can't trust them to be right, so we needed to do all the calculations by hand or on a calculator. He would give me a spreadsheet once or twice a week that required, let's say, 45 seconds to do. But maybe 7 hours by hand, and he told me to go to Starbucks or something and crank it out. He thought that since I pasted as values and he couldn't see the formulas that I did it by hand, when really I just did it in 45 seconds, sent an email on delay for 7 hours. And studied for the next semester. Dude was the poster boy for failing upwards in your career. First day of internship he told me with a straight face he was a work harder not smarter kinda guy. Did you work for Dunder Mifflin or something? In high school we had to do 4 book reports every year. A friend of mine did his on each Lord of the Rings books and The Hobbit freshman year and turned in the same 4 book reports for the rest of his time in high school. You switched English teachers every year, so no one ever caught on. I was never brave enough to try the same thing. I have an example of how the truly lazy will sabotage tracking so no one knows shit is broken. There was this guy at a software company that does integrated software systems. He hated his boss and his job and apparently most of his team. Every time he was assigned a bug to fix, he would mark it resolved and assign it to a no-reply email address associated with the team. The odd thing that I don't understand is how he managed to keep issues from getting escalated to other real people. At any rate, no one caught on. When he found a new job and a couple people on his team took him out for drinks, he said, "You should look into all the bugs I fixed." I never did any of that. So the guys who took him out for drinks went back and audited his work and were like, holy fuck. He not only did nothing, he had identified issues for like a year. Maybe not the most impressive story here, but I thought it was a great sidestep of effort nonetheless. Co-worker of mine had to get rid of a smaller junk fiberglass boat with no trailer. Our other co-workers are all telling him how much time and money he's going to need to spend to get rid of it, and he's just saying, "Oh, is that so?" He took off one day, and sat down on his lawn with a cooler of beer. That day was garbage day. Inevitably, the trash guys roll up. He hands each of them a cold beer, and says, "Hey boys, got $50 for each of you if you help me out real quick." They fed the entire 12-feet boat into the packer, crushing 2 feet at a time. I'm in corporate accounting, and I'm the only one in my department with a CPA. Of course, I have to take continuing education for my license, and I usually take as many hours of Excel courses as I can each year. By learning the keyboard shortcuts, advanced formulas, and a bunch of useful hidden features in Excel, I'm able to get most of my work done in less than 2 hours. Then spend the rest of the day browsing Reddit and watching YouTube videos. Thank goodness our cubicle walls are high, or I'm sure they would have fired me by now for being on my phone 6+ hours each day. I look back at my time in corporate accounting and often realize just how much fucking around I did at work with literally no consequences. Other than month-end close, I feel like I sat on Reddit a solid 4+ hours a day. If I had improved my Excel to the point of knowing how to write macros, I would have been on 7/8 of the day. It made a lot of sense why the company I worked for decided to push for job documentation for 2 years and then outsourced the work to offshore accountants. Sometimes I wish I was still in that job, and some days I'm very, very happy that I changed careers. There's a story that I've heard a few dozen times about a toothpaste company that had accidentally sent out cases of their product that had a few empty single boxes of toothpaste. The company had endeavored, not only to rectify their mistake, but to ensure they did not repeat it. They hired an engineering company that designed a scale and alarm shutdown system. If an empty carton was passed down the production line, klaxons would be triggered, and a full stop would initiate until the offending box was recovered. And an all clear had been entered into the computer system, before production could resume. The company paid through the nose, but was ultimately pleased with their failsafe, and the engineers patted each other on the back. A few months pass, and the engineers returned for quality control. The toothpaste company reported zero margin of error for weeks. Turns out, one of the minimum wage hairnet types on the assembly line didn't appreciate the sound of klaxons, or working with computers. So, he or she had aimed a large fan at the production line, before the scale, that blew the lighter, empty cartons off of the conveyor belt. Problem solved. I used to process claims, around 10 plus years ago. One system we had to use back then was an old as hell terminal program that took 4 line items per page, that's it. For a usual claim, no big deal, not too hard to keep track of things over 2 or 3 pages. For a longer claim, most fit on one. However, we had the dreaded shoebox claims. This was the person who saved up every receipt all year in a metaphorical shoebox, and sent everything in, once a year, to empty their account. We hated them. Dozens or hundreds of line items totaling thousands of dollars. Just because you only have $500 in yours doesn't mean we get to stop there. If you sent in $4,000 in receipts, I got to account for it all. Totally killed your numbers for the day, and they tracked claims per hour religiously. The main issue was double checking that everything added up right when you were done entering it. At 4 items a page it took forever to tally. So, I made an Excel sheet. It was laid out so I could enter every single line, then run a macro that would calculate the needed totals, and dump all the text to a text file formatted exactly so I could select 4 items at a time, and paste them directly into the terminal window from the default starting cursor position. And every field would fill in automatically. Copy, paste, next, copy, paste, next, copy, paste, next, etc. etc. It easily halved my entry times, with way less work. Finding any typos was much easier. I just had to look at one column organized sheet instead of scrolling through God knows how many pages of terminal text. It was great. I showed it to my manager so the rest of my team could use it. She was horrified I would use something like that, as no human was double checking as they went along. This despite demonstrable improvements to my error rates on large claims after I started using it. She ordered me to stop using it and forbid anyone in her team from automating any part of their job at all. I kept using it for all of the 2 months I stayed there after that. I had some of the highest claim per hour numbers and lowest error rates on her team. I never developed any more tools for them. Fuck her. Worked as a cashier during the holiday season back when I was 16. The supermarket was selling drinks by the boxes, and at that time, we only had barcode scanners that was at the front of the computer. No gun-type scanners existed. I was lazy and didn't want to carry boxes up to the scanner. So I politely asked my customers if I could carve out the barcode from their box to scan and keep. Some agreed, some didn't want to, but eventually I managed to amass all the barcodes needed. Labeled them and kept them in a file for easy reference. Apparently some other cashier got green-eyed at my smart move and complained to the chief cashier, who promptly lectured me on, bullshit alert, how it's dangerous for me to scan such barcodes as I might scan the wrong things. She told me to throw it all away and carry the boxes like I was meant to. I mean, I was young so I could, but the other cashiers were older and some were elderly and needed the customers themselves to help carry the boxes to the scanner. But whatever, I guess jealousy trumps common sense.